Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back into the Buster Show podcast. Today, I'm very excited because we have my guy Tzvi. Welcome to the show, my friend, incredible entrepreneur, and just someone who I respect a lot.
Appreciate you having me, brother, man. I always appreciate speaking with you.
So first things first, I always just love getting an idea of what people are excited about. So what excites you the most right now, whether it be on the sports side, the social media, the marketing side? What do you get most excited about in your day to day?
Yeah. Honestly, right now, man, I'm just excited about opportunity, right? Whether that's in the financial space, whether that's in the marketing space, whether that's in the sports space. Super Bowl just happened. NBA season's going on. MLB season's about to start. Um, there's just a lot of opportunity right now, and that's what excites me.
Makes sense. I'd love to talk about sort of your origin story. I assume you went to school, right? It was in
Yeah,
college.
I went to college, but I studied history. So it has nothing to do with kind of where we're at now.
Where did that change take place? How did you go from, potentially could have been a killer historian, but obviously you went a different direction. How did that change happen?
For sure. And to be honest, I was going to be a high school history teacher, and I was accepted and ready to go to Columbia's Teachers College. And this was my senior year of school. I got an internship to Slam. Well, backstory: I applied for an internship to 50 publications. Everyone from ESPN to Esquire to WGQ, and only one or two got back to me. And one of them was Ben Osborne, who was the editor in chief at Slam at the time. And this was probably summer, and he's like, let's meet up sometime during the semester. 3-4 months go by. I email him. I'm like, hey, we're halfway down the semester. Like, what's going on? He's like, yeah, come by the office in a couple of weeks and let's meet. And fortuitous timing, we had a meeting, and I just remember being in the office, and this was height of like Celtics big three era: KG, Ray Allen, Paul Pierce. And they were like, what's your team? And at the time I was a Celtics fan, and they were like, everyone's a Celtics fan right now. Like, prove it. I was like, well, honestly, I became a Celtics fan when they had Rick Fox and Dino Raja, and when the whole Bryant fiasco happened. So I kind of go way back, and they were like, oh, that's like legit. You're actually a sports fan. And honestly, once I got a foot in the door, I was going to do everything I could never to get back out. Internship started a month later. I moved around all my classes to make it work. And I knew it was real when on the day of my graduation, cap and gown in hand, I walked from Madison Square Garden to the office to put in an afternoon of work. And have never looked back, man. Have never looked back at all.
Wait. You had to walk at the garden?
Yeah, in the green room, like where the draft used to be, and where they have some like minor concerts and stuff. That's where it was. And then Slam at the time was on 25th and Broadway, so short walk down. And I just remember, I used to go in sweatpants and a t-shirt or whatever, and I'm dressed up and buttoned down, and everyone's like, "What's going on?" And I was like, "Well, I just graduated, minutes ago." And yeah, man, I think the biggest thing in our industry, if you work in sports, marketing, PR, biz dev, agent, is communication. And I think in studying history, man, I really just learned how to write. I really learned how to communicate myself. And I think that transcends everything. I know how to write, whether that's a good email or a good article, hopefully good. But, really just knowing how to get your point across and knowing how to make sure that you come off as best as possible and make sure that your meaning can't be misinterpreted.
Totally. And you see people, I feel like most of the problems that arise in today's world, whether it be super public facing at like a high level or even just person to person, it's always just communication issues.
That's it. And whether it's written or whether it's, verbal, like you just have to come across the proper way. And that doesn't always mean the same thing. It doesn't always mean being well spoken, well written. It just means you have to be personable. People have to like you. And most importantly, people have to trust you, and people have to know what you're talking about. And that is maybe, the thing that I think that has pushed me the furthest is really just knowing that those are skill sets that I find important, and then really just working on them to make sure that, people know who I am and can respect who I am.
100%. Communication and then the lack thereof is the other side of it. Just not being open. So maybe if everybody had studied to be a historian, the world would be in a lot better place. And
It could be, man. But ultimately, I think if everyone just tackled what they wanted to tackle and really went at it full steam, we'd be in a good zone. And maybe we're heading that direction. Who knows?
Yeah, I think social media has opened that up for a lot of people that maybe otherwise wouldn't have realized that, because there are different, like, I feel like what a lot of what you're talking about is like following your passion and doing things of that nature. Like that's why you're happy, because you've been able to do, since then, what you've, for the most part, I imagine wanted to do. And I feel like there are different levels. There's like the stuff you're kind of passionate about. Like for me, I was kind of passionate about being a broadcaster. And then I discovered like the social media thing. And I was like, oh, well, now you can kind of do whatever the hell you want. And I feel like a lot of other people are discovering that as well. And hopefully it does put us in that better place like you're talking about.
Yeah, and to your point, man, following, but then finding. You may not know what your passion is or may think you know what it is, but then you actually learn what it is along the way. And I think, I mean, who am I, man? I'm no great philosopher, but that's the key to life, man, is just finding your meaning and then zoning in on that.
Totally. And nobody's a great philosopher until they're gone also. That's
Yeah.
that's just the fact of the matter. So you might also be. Um,
We'll find out, or you'll find out. You tell me.
right, exactly. Um, so you started off at Slam, and then I know you worked at Stance and you worked at a bunch of different places. Sort of how did that, what does your sort of chronology look like in that sense?
For
And
sure. So I was at Slam for about a half decade, started as an intern, was really lucky to get an editorial position, which only comes open every few years there, small publication. Does a lot of big work, but it's small as far as personnel. Growing now, but small then. And kind of moved up the ladder there, really put in my time. And at a certain point in time, Stance, which was then a growing company, just getting into sports, was like, we need someone to kind of come in and direct our sports efforts. And so, the offer was right, the timing was kind of right. And the idea of you're a good journalist, maybe, but not great, not transcendent. So maybe this is your opportunity to kind of move on. And I hit the ground running and worked in marketing for Stance and got to be the first NBA on-court logo, be a part of our sock deal, and then MLB on field, and then an NFL license and a bunch of other licensing during that term, Space Jam and Uncle Drew and Disney and, a bunch of affiliated pieces. But for me, and then we'll talk about the next one after that, but for me, the biggest learning was just like storytelling. Journalism is about storytelling, podcasting is about storytelling, being on social media is about storytelling, and marketing is about storytelling. And so I changed my seat at the table, I changed my position, I changed which way I was looking, but telling stories didn't change. I went from telling it about a single player to kind of saying, okay, what is our brand story this quarter? Or what story are we telling with this party or this event? Or why are we signing this athlete? And what is the messaging we're trying to get across? And I think for me, I had that realization, and I'm sure some people in the field of marketing disagree, but I had that realization that if you can tell a great story and figure out how to execute it, you're going to win, or you're going to put yourself in a position to win. And I think that transcends, and when I was at Stance, we were lucky enough, and I guess we were skilled enough too, to engage in a collab with Kobe Bryant and Kobe Inc. during his last season. You might remember we did an NBA on-court sock. I believe it was the first sock ever that like commemorated an active player. It had his while he was playing, and he wore them, and that must have been an interesting
crazy
moment.
concept. Yeah.
The Lakers wore them on 2 occasions. I remember one very well because they actually beat the Warriors, and this was during their amazing season. So, and then they wore them the last game of the season. But that went off well, whatever it was, built some connections. And, a few years down the line, I ended up being brought on as, CMO at Mamba Academy and working, along those lines. And, just again, storytelling, right? How do you go from being a journalist, and working on Slam magazine to being in sports marketing and brand marketing to, being the CMO of of an academy, for lack of a better term? The only common thread there outside of sports is storytelling. And if you can tell a great story, which most of you can get where you want to go, and you can accomplish what you want to accomplish. And whether that story is about athletes or cards or Bitcoin or finances, if you can talk in such a way that excites people and that captures them and that gets the point across, you can be successful.
100%. So much to unpack there. First things first, I love that you mentioned cards in there. But to talk about Stance, what do you think differentiated Stance, and put them in a position to where they were able to buy the sock license rights for the NBA over Nike and Adidas and all of the above? What do you think it was? I mean, did storytelling put them in that position too? Like, how do you think they were able to get themselves from not having been known to that, where it took every
Sure.
other company 30 years
Yeah,
for that apparel?
yeah, two part. One is ingenuity, and two is relentlessness. So the ingenuity was, you're going back now, more than half a decade, 7, 8 years at this point. Is no one, socks were small. Think back to like, when you were a teenager, when you were 14, 13, 12, like socks were just becoming a thing or weren't really a thing. And the founders of Stance were had enough foresight to see like this could be an industry. This is a blank space that's going to fill up. The only thing that was there at the time was Nike Elite, but that was
I
like black and
remember the
white.
days,
That was it.
man.
You had to have elites. You had to have it.
Athletes.
And Stance came in and really differentiated the game. And they were the first ones. I remember this before I was there, but at NBA All-Star one year, I want to say Houston, they came out with sublimated legends, so printed art of former NBA greats and Hall of Famers on socks, and they were just available at like top end sneaker stores, and they were like limited numbers, and they popped off. Select wearing them, the cool kids were wearing them, like everyone that kind of mattered or drove brand awareness was wearing them, and so it was like, oh wow, like there's something here. These are really really cool. And then one of my mentors, who was a VP at Stance at the time, Clark Miyazaki, him and a couple of the founders were relentless about wanting to do more than the NBA and pitching this proposition of, let's get a sock license. Let's do an on-court sock license, right? Like the Adidas deal is running out. You guys are going to do a deal with someone new. Maybe it's Nike, maybe not, whoever it was at that time. But it's like, let's carve out socks and do a sock deal. And obviously the answer was no, many, many times over. But there came a point in time, and again, this isn't my story, this is Clark's story, but they literally presented a few of our good friends, shout out Lisa, but they presented almost like a blank check to the NBA, like what would it take, and here's a 7-figure check, and this is how serious we are about getting this on-court license. And I think at that point the conversation started in earnest. Like, let's look at this and let's make it happen. And there's a lot of different ways it could have been executed, and a lot of different ways it could have worked, and ways it would have been way worse, and ways it could have been even better. But it ended up being a 2-year on-court deal, kind of in the year between Adidas, Nike. And it was phenomenal, man, to be there in point position, executing against it from a player perspective, from an NBA perspective. The team I was working with, BJ, Clark, Corey, everyone working alongside us, like, just phenomenal spot to be. And I thought I was connected when I was, working at Slam. Like, you can go in the locker room before the games, players know you, agents know you. It was just different, it was different. And I was lucky enough to, be part of the celebration at all of those finals, every year that we were on court before and after. But just the level of being close to the game that we love, man, like really being a part of it was awesome. And every time you turned on the TV, seeing the guys wearing your logo, a small Southern California brand, maybe at the time 75 employees, 100 employees. I remember the first night seeing Anthony Davis wear it. I think the Pellies played the Warriors opening night that first season, 15-16, and to see like AD, a picture of AD wearing socks was like, I mean, we did it, right? Like, this is something that we'll talk about with our kids, and they won't remember it, and Stance will be huge or it won't be, but it doesn't matter. Like, no one can take this moment away from us. And if you Google NBA Getty 2015, 2016, 2017,
Every photo,
and that will live forever. And for me to have been a part of it, especially where I was in life, being so young, being inexperienced, and like breaking my teeth on that deal, couldn't have been more lucky. Couldn't have been luckier, And I like to think I'm somewhat skilled. I like to think I know what I'm doing. I like to think I serve a purpose, but something to be said for right place, right time. I walked in while that deal was being sewn up, helped kind of finalize it, in my own little way. And that was it. Next thing I know, we're building an on-court line. And then the next thing, it leads to doing MLB on field. And it just kind of changed the game in many forms and fashions. And it's funny because Nike's on court now, and there's jersey patches now, and people are selling it, but we were actually the first logo ever to be on court, during an NBA regular season game, right? Like Adidas's jock tag was tucked into the shorts. Reebok before that tucked into the shorts. We were the first one that the logo was actually on court. And, now you think about Nike, you think about, any logo, Jordan, all these logos are on court now, and that's amazing. And I'm glad that's the
Now you
case.
have advertiser logos, let alone merch logos.
Yeah, and people feel this way, people feel that way. I think it's great, but the fact that we were first, to me, like, again, you just can't take it away from us, and again, partly timing, partly skill, partly luck, but wow, man, just talk about like having a moment that was like unmatched.
Totally. No, I love that. And it definitely laid a lot of foundation work for other companies to replicate that, not just in the NBA, but in other professional sports as well. And I think, you know, I'm excited for, that to be taken over into entertainment more so. So you have like the official socks of like TV shows and things like it's all the same thing, just in different.
And look, we talked about it earlier, right? What am I excited for? I'm excited for opportunity, man, opportunity and innovation. And in that sense, and in that moment, we were the innovators. And, crazy. You've been an innovator. You have a channel on social that's crazy. Following you yourself, do. You're always challenging the norms. You're always building content, working with new brands. And there's something about being first. And look, 90 times out of 100, you know what I'm saying? 9 out of 10 times you won't be successful. But on that 10th one, like, can't nobody tell you nothing, you know what I mean? Like, that's the best feeling in the world. And the money is great, but the sense of accomplishment is even greater. And again, whether that's a good investment, a good business deal, good work, good kids, whatever it is, like when someone comes to fruition and that moment comes, it's like that feeling is special.
Right. Being an innovator is very similar. I'm not one myself, but I've heard from many friends who are, in angel investing, 1 out of 30, right? You're an all-time success and you're speaking on stages and like you live on it for the rest of your life. I mean, but the fun thing about innovating as well, is inherently it is something that never ends, and only pushes it forwards, whatever the said subject or topic or movement is, that then gets other people, and then it turns into like one of those hamster wheels of like
That's it,
ideation.
man. That's it. Like at Stance, we a lot of copycats followed us, man. Some are doing really well, and like I'm proud of that, man. If you have an idea that's so good that someone else wants to jump on it afterwards or while you're doing it, like, man, that's amazing. I must have been doing something right, and Stance was doing something right, and I was a part of it, and incredible, man, incredible. But I think to talk about Stance's success goes back to something we were talking about, and good communications, but more than that, good people. The founders were just incredible, and obviously great businessmen. You don't start a company that reaches that level and look at their backgrounds, but just dope people, and like you wanted to work with them, and they got talent that way, not even with the packages and the comp packages, but with how good they were and like how they excited you and how they got you ready to go to work. And like I was saying, my mentor, my supervisor, Clark, like the way the dude thought, like, I don't know, I know a lot of people who have since left there, and everyone came out a different person than they came in. Everyone is an innovator or an entrepreneur or is doing stuff more than just a day job, just about. And I think that speaks a ton to, that founding five.
100%. Then to jump to your time at the Mamba Academy, what do you think your like the lessons that you learned there that you couldn't have learned elsewhere? What are some of those that have stood out for you?
For sure. I mean, I think the biggest thing that I learned, man, is that you can have the best laid plans, and the unexpected can happen. The craziest thing can happen, and I can envision 100 ways that my tenure there would have went. And the way it kind of went, the way the second half of it went, was definitely not one of those 100 ways. And yeah, you really, like, it's just that, man, it's moving on your feet. It's, again, being innovative. It's being ready for the moment, whatever the moment is. And right now, I'm helping a bunch of athletes with their brand development, with their digital and social marketing, with their merchandise. And the biggest thing I tell them is, like, we plan for just about 2 months for that one moment to happen, but it's always being prepared for whenever that moment's going to happen. And it was the same thing, you just stay ready, you stay prepared, you stay up to date with what's going on in the industry, you stay plugged into the company, into your coworkers. And when something happens, good or bad, you're ready do what needs to be done. And I think that was the lesson there. And a good example just now with what I'm working on is I'm working with a great young cornerback named Sean Murphy-Bunting on the Buccaneers, and great guy. And
Now
kind of
Super
talked
Bowl
about
champ.
the Super Bowl champ now. And, I don't have to tell him that, he knows it. And
He does.
we talked all season about, that moment, when's that moment coming, and that's my message when I'm working with guys is there's a lot that we can talk about doing, but we can only execute on it, or it will only work when there's something that happens on field that precipitates. And, playoffs, you can go out and get an interception in 3 straight games, you're playing your ass off. You go in the Super Bowl, you were ready for the moment. You made a moment happen. So whether that's the social growth that's come because of that, which is exponential, whether it's the merchandise that we launched the night of the Super Bowl, which has been selling really well, or whether it's, just the business and brand development and the brand awareness. People know your name now. You know what I'm saying? You didn't know his name 3 months ago. You know his name now is what comes of it. And it's just being ready for that moment. And that's it, man. I feel like people like you and me, like we work 360 days a year for those 5 days, those 5 moments that are everything. They're the days that maybe you make your money. They're the days that you grow your following. They're the days that you hit the jackpot. And you have to stay ready all year for those, because if you're not ready for them, you can't take advantage of them. And you can have a 3 interception day, but if you don't have the plan alongside it to go out with it, what did that do for you? So it's really just maximizing those moments. And I think I definitely learned that over the past, year for sure.
It's a really interesting take that the way you just articulated it on a concept that I believe in deeply, which is one of the worst things that can happen to you is a ton of success or virality right out of the gate, because then you don't have that preparation, you don't have that plan to back it up. Let's say you put out your first YouTube video and you get 10 million views. Then people go to your channel and they look for what else you have, and you have nothing.
Exactly.
It's your first video. And now you have to back that up with something as good in a 10th the amount of time. You can't do it. It's impossible. And there's also an element of luck involved. So I think it really screws you over algorithmically, mentally, and then strategically as well. And it's just an all around no. Whereas if you did what you're talking about, which is plan things, work at it, get consistently better, and then you're ready. And then afterwards, you're just doing the same thing that you were always doing because you were doing it before.
Yeah, and I compare it to sports, right? You work out all off season, you work out on off days, so that when those game day comes, 82 in the NBA or 72 or 70, but 16 in the NFL, 162 or 150 in the MLB, you're ready. You're ready. You are going to play your best, or as best as you can, because you've been working for that moment. And it applies in business, it applies to social media, it applies to digital media. Like, always stay ready and get ready for those moments, so when they do come, you can take advantage of them. And I think that's fundamental to everything we do, whether you're an entrepreneur, a journalist, work in marketing, or work in PR, comms. Like, that's the key is being and staying ready.
100%. I do want to talk about some of the other people you're helping build brands and sort of the importance of building a personal brand as an athlete, particularly in regards to the longevity and business opportunities. But I did also want to ask you, since obviously you had such a unique relationship with the late GOAT, Kobe Bryant, what were some of the biggest things that you learned from him, or that you thought about him beforehand that were confirmed true, maybe in regards to his work ethic, or just main takeaways that people might not necessarily know?
For sure. I'll tell you, this is kind of the way I approach it still to this day, and you might think I'm crazy, but it's still pretty recent to me. And the way I kind of approach his loss is just keep it internal, man. Like, I'll say this, we have many great conversations. And for me, the way I keep spirit alive is I keep it to myself. Like, I still have that ownership yet. I haven't shared anything, because for me, like, that's mine, and like, it's not the world's.
Respect.
And that's the way I like to approach it, and maybe one day that'll change. But for now, there's so much content out there, let's say, that I don't feel like anyone needs to hear what I have to say, or my thoughts, or my knowledge. Like, for now, I kind of, that'll be one day, hopefully, memories I can share with my son and my daughter. And otherwise, like, I'm like, I have nothing to add to the conversation of note,
Sense. There's definitely, I can't wait for documentaries in the future. That's all I can say.
For sure.
Back to the sort of importance of building a personal brand from a young age, because a lot of the people you do work with are on the younger side, right?
Yes, for sure. For sure.
Where do you sort of see that importance in regards to building something that, maybe isn't only based on their on-field or on-court performance, and how should these sort of athletes position themselves from that personal brand standpoint, utilizing social for their long-term success?
For sure. I mean, to your point, you leverage what you're doing on court, you leverage what you're doing on field to kind of help you grow your brand, help you grow your star, help, people care about you because of basketball or football, but you can show them the other side of who you are and what you're doing and take advantage of the fact that they care about you in the first place. And I think for me, when I approach the brand awareness and when I approach brand building, it's always identifying that North Star. And that comes from the player. But like, what do you care about? What do you hope to accomplish? Are we growing your following and growing your brand name and your awareness so you can make more marketing money? There's nothing wrong with that. But is that the case? Cool. Are we doing it because you want to be a rock and a pillar in your community and you want to be a philanthropist and you want to give back as much as possible? So the bigger your social following, the bigger your megaphone, the bigger difference we can make. Love that. Great. Incredible. And do you just want to build your brand because you're not sure your why yet, but you have this amazing opportunity, and in 3 years or 5 years or 10 or 15 years, it'll be gone. So take advantage of it for the moment so that when you do know what you want to do with it, you can go ahead and do that. And, so far, those are kind of the three angles that I've seen, and I appreciate all of them. I think the biggest thing, though, is the guys have to, and the women have to genuinely want to do it, right? Like, it's not like, my agent wants me to create a brand or like so-and-so. It's like, no, like if you want it to happen, if you want to be successful at it, it's gotta come from here. It's gotta come from here. Like, you really have to put your chest into it. You gotta want to do it. And that doesn't have to mean it's active, right? I could do it for you. Somebody can do it for you, probably even better than me. It just means that you have to know what goes into it, from a social perspective, from a digital perspective, from a speaking perspective, from a content perspective. Like, you just have to know that, like, it doesn't just happen because you want it to happen. There's steps involved and there's work involved. And like, are you down for the ride for real? And if you are, honestly, it doesn't matter what sport you play. It doesn't matter how good you are. We can maximize that. And that's me and 1,000 other people, but we can make that happen for you. And if you don't, or you're not ready, that's cool. Like, focus on the field work, focus on the court work. Let that speak for you for now. And I have a client, who I won't even name right now, but everyone knows who he is. And his whole thing was his first couple of years in the league, in the NFL, he just focused on being the best player he could be. And he feels like he did that, right? He and his family did that. They really left their mark on the field. And it's like, okay, now I can take a breath and I feel like I'm still focusing as hard as ever on field, but people know that now. They know me as a great player or a good player. Now I can also put a little bit of effort and energy into like maximizing that moment and creating a brand around it. And for him, a lot of it is philanthropy, and entrepreneurship. And so it's like, great, like, people won't be confused and think that I'm not focusing on the game anymore. Like, no, they know I'm focused on the game. And now they won't judge me if they see that I'm also posting about other things. And I think, honestly, that's a great perspective. Unless you are that dude, like as a rookie, focus on being great. Focus on being great at the number one thing. And everything else is everything else. And we can make it work for you when the time is right. Because again, if you're focused on all that other stuff and you're not performing on the court, it's not really going to execute. It's not really going to execute. And, that's kind of like my mindset on it, is going back to the point, make moments happen. And then we can go and execute on them with the game plan that we've already created. But you got to make those moments happen. If you're a football player, those moments start on the field. A basketball player, they start on the hardwood. A baseball player, they start on the diamond. Golfer, and they start on the 18th. And make those moments happen, create them. And then me and a bunch of my peers and people like you are out there ready to help you execute on the game plan. But it starts with the moment.
100%. And I think all of those things are applicable to things outside of sports too, right? Like, just to give other, contextual examples. Like, if you're a poet, you're Amanda, right? And you speak at the inauguration, she was ready and she capitalized on the opportunity. And then, people were able to execute on her being able to execute. It's like the two layers of execution. You show up like, you know, I'll use a podcast example. Elon Musk goes on Joe Rogan's podcast. He does a great job. A lot of the other stuff takes care of itself. And then, you know, it'll snowball if you have the right team and right people around you into greater and better opportunities than ever before. And 100% in sports, it's very directly correlated. And I think it's just as much so for people, really anybody in their day to day, like whatever they love or are great at. Like you even have that for your own, like you executing on somebody else's execution is the same thing for you.
Yeah, that's my execution. And yeah, for sure. And I think to your point, like sports is the greatest metaphor for life. So we're using sports examples, and that's the world I inhabit. But it applies to business, parenthood. You know, there's nothing it doesn't apply to in some form or fashion. And so, look, yeah, one of the greatest keys to life is being ready, staying ready, getting ready. You never know when that moment's going to come, when that luck's going to come, when that break's going to come. And you go out and crush it because you're ready for it, you know. And so it is, man. You can usually see who is ready, who isn't ready, you know, and the work speaks for itself.
100,000%. Last question. If you could go back and tell yourself at, you know, 22 years old, one piece of advice, what are you going back and telling yourself? And you can't say to invest in Bitcoin or sports cards.
Yeah. I'll give you a quick note on that, though. I did have a roommate who in 2011, I believe, did invest in Bitcoin. So bless him, man. I could probably, you know, pay me back for a few months of rent, bro. Yeah, honestly, the greatest advice would be take notes. You know, take notes of your wins, take notes of your losses, but take notes of the moments. You know, and when I was young in the game, actually, I tried doing this. Every game I went to as a journalist covering it, I would sit in the stands, and outside of whatever I was writing or whatever feature I was working on or profile, I would try to take personal notes from that day. Who did I speak to in the press room? You know, what did I see? What did I, you know, what did I pick up on? Who did I see do something that I found very interesting? And I've gone back and looked at it, and it's like, wow, firstly, the precursor to some greatness. You know, I saw like Alan Hahn's rise, you know, firsthand, and different people, but just like the tips you can pick up for one hand and the things you can learn, positive and negative, is incredible. But B, just having those notes, having those memories, you know, and you can do it on a Word doc, you can do it on social media, just archive your social media and, you know, look at it, print it or whatever, you know, put it on a Word doc and look at it. But just, man, like don't forget these moments and these days. And, you know, take you for instance, is in the blink of an eye, you're on to the next thing. You know, you're done with pods and you're doing something just on Clubhouse, or you're doing something just on TikTok, and it'll be good to have these archived. It'll be good to go back and look at these in 10 years. And you know, that's kind of where I'm at. You know, sometimes I go back and look at articles that I wrote, features that I wrote, and I don't remember writing them, and I'm so glad that I have them and the notes surrounding them. Because it brings back a moment in time. And I did it to an extent, and I wish I had done it more. And you know, it's hard to find time in the day to do anything that, you know, isn't purposeful, but I think that is purposeful in a sense. And I urge a lot of people to take notes, you know, and on your personal things, on things we observe. You know, I keep a moleskin on me at all times, and you know, I'm always writing, even if it's just quick shorthand, something that I want to get back to later. It's like keeping your web browser tabs open. You know, you always plan on coming back to it. Maybe you will, maybe you won't, but at least these won't crash. You know what I mean? And that's it, man. Like really, the moments, man. The moments. It's hard to get them back. So try to take notes. You know, and some of them you're gonna forget, man. You're gonna have you and everyone gonna have so many moments in life. You're not gonna remember all of them. And do your best, you know, to record some of them in some form or fashion, you know what I mean? So that one day you and your offspring, or hey man, you're gonna be great, you're gonna be famous, someone's gonna be writing a biography about you, a historian can go back and learn all about you.
Totally. I love all of that. And also, you know, something that I try to remind myself of is, like our memory, like there is a limited capacity to our memory, which gets worse every year. Like my memory's not going to get any better, right? I mean, there's some little things that you can do, eat the right foods, exercise, do all that. But once you're doing that, there's not that much more that you can do.
Nah, and think about you, bro, right? Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but right now you're moving around city to city, right? You're making the most of, working from home and being down during the pandemic, and incredible, right? So you're taking a ton of pictures. I know you're posting on social. I know. Hopefully you're writing some stuff down too, or audio recording or video recording, because it'll be hard for you wherever you are in 10 years to believe that, I actually pulled that off. I did that. I lived in 30 cities this year, or I lived in 6 countries. Like, how did I do that? And what was that like? And you'll have memories, to your point, you know what I mean? But eyewitness testimony isn't that great, as we know. So to go back and look at what you wrote in the time and what you recorded in real time will be like, oh yeah, I actually really did love Nashville, or oh no, I really didn't like Nashville. You know what I mean? But like, it'll be there in writing.
Saying that. No, I love everybody in Nashville, but I didn't find much to do there. No, but that's what this podcast is. I mean, this podcast is a verbal and audio recording of all of my favorite conversations in perpetuity. That's why I do it. To your
That's
point.
it, man. It's just it's a moment in time. You know what I mean? And to capture it, I think is incredible. And again, maybe that goes to my history background. Maybe that goes to the fact that I love sports journalism and journalism in general. And if you read ththings written in the 70s, 80s, 90s, before that, after that, they don't always stand the test of time. But even just to read them is so intriguing, to get that snapshot, that moment in time. And man, again, it comes back to storytelling. You know what I mean? And the ability to tell them, the ability to listen to them. And that's it, man. That is the gist of it. I think that's why we all love sports. That's why we all love a game winner. We love the story of what went into that moment happening, and the stories we can tell about where we were when that moment happened. What's the first thing you think about when I tell you the Kawhi shot?
Oh my God, just the photos for the most part. But I mean, I was at one of those games, and I wasn't at the final one, but yeah, just the intensity and hype around that. And then I was at OVO Fest right afterwards. So Drake came out with the Giant Championship. Everybody's going crazy. Yeah, that was nuts.
Yeah, man, exactly. And you think about that, and for me, I think about Kawhi's backstory and his journey, and coming up in SoCal and coming up in the IE, and I think about Joel Embiid being right there crying on the floor. I think about Ben Simmons, you know what I mean? And there's so many stories, and we each derive our own, meaning from it, and we each pluck certain stories that we like or that speak to us. And so it is, man. That's the fabric of life, you know what I mean? And I'm no great philosopher. Honestly, I don't know anything, man, but I do know that that's it, man. Like, we can all connect through stories, man. And that's the beautiful thing about sports. And whether you're watching the Super Bowl or whether you're watching the Heat game last night, there's a story behind that. There's a story behind the game. There's a story behind every player in the game. And honestly, most of them haven't even been told yet. And I can't wait to read about them, tell some of them, help the players tell some of them, see you tell some of them. And, that's it, man. So that's it, man. I'm looking forward to all the opportunity coming forward, some positive, some negative, but, find those moments, be prepared for that moment, and make the most of that opportunity. Shout out to Sean Murphy Bunting, did just that. The Buccaneers did just that. A bunch of NBA teams doing just that right now. Miles Turner came on here with you 2 weeks ago and did just that. Told an incredible story that I had never heard before, and about his mom.
One about his mom. So
yeah, of course. And for you, that was a moment too, because he came on your pod and he told that story, and it went viral. And I'm like, that's good for you, and it's good for him, and it was a great story, so it's good for everybody. And that is what it is, you know what I mean? And now we're not going to go viral, bro. Sorry, you got the wrong guy on here. Nobody cares about me. But
it's depth, not width.
Listen
to this got more than 2/3.
This is for that niche audience, but that's it, man. Like, I think we're in the business of stories, man, and I love the NBA and all sports just for the amount of stories that are there. Miles' story has barely been told, man. He told you a snippet of it, and now I want to hear even more of it. You know what I mean?
He's a really smart guy. He's
super sharp. And it's incredible how many athletes, I think athletes on average, are smarter than the average person, in my opinion.
By far.
You can't get to where they are without being, damn near a savant, you know what I mean? And navigating those lanes they have to navigate, whether that's interpersonal or whether that's just off the strength of IQ. And you don't make it. You don't become that 0.001% if you're not special. And man, I see that in every dude I talk to and every woman I talk to in the WNBA and in soccer league. Like, they're different. They're built different. They're special.
It's just
And
different, man. It's so obvious too. Like the second you meet them, anybody who is an expert at anything or great at anything, like you for marketing and the stuff that you're doing, you know, Miles for blocking shots, and you know,
yeah,
if I had to bet on it, I'm not a betting man, but I would bet that he's going to be defensive player of the year in the near future, right? It's like people who narrow lock in on anything. You know, I had Nobel Prize winning paleontologist. For him, it's that, you know, but to lock in on that thing because they love it. And that, yeah, I'm a believer in time, energy, passion drive everything, but it's also how you're able to convey that passion onto other people. You can be
for
passionate
sure.
about literally anything, but if you're passionate enough, you'll get the whole world excited about it.
That's it. And I'm gonna call you on it though. You said you're not a betting man, but I know you mess around with the markets. I know you mess around with Bitcoin a little bit. So like, you are a betting man. You just don't think of it in that
Well, I
sense,
can't
man.
legally bet on sports yet. I'm 20.
All right. Okay. Okay. I hear that. I hear that.
But
That's fun.
I very, very publicly bet on sports cards and privately cryptocurrency.
I feel that. I feel that. What is I know you've spoken about this, but any good sports cards pickups, recently?
I mean, here I'll show you. I'll just with Matt, we'll do a little show and tell to close out the podcast. For
I
those
got, I got, I got a couple right here in my on my desk too.
for those who are listening to the audio, just go over to YouTube and you can watch the end of this. Here, I'll show you some favorites. I went big on Pokemon about a year ago. Some of these.
Trust me, I remember that. I remember that you were early in, and for me, it's like I'm not interested enough to like go into that. Even if I believe in it as a market, I just don't know enough. But I remember when you did.
So I'm a fan of. More recently, I like buying the best, like the legends. It doesn't matter. Like I'd rather spend $1,000 on a Roger Federer signed 2003 Net Pro rookie than I would a young guy. Nothing against that. That's just sort of where my head's at. Here's a Kyrie tonight 199 rookie auto. You'll get a kick out of this. This is Jerry Jones business card signed. I wish I had all my president autographs because I'm obsessed with collecting presidential autographs. It's a 1999 unlimited Charizard. You'll get a big kick out of this. This is the highest graded Stevie Wonder 1969 Panini Cantanti card in the world. They are ridiculously underappreciated.
That's amazing. Yeah, what's funny is, man, when I was at Stance. Okay. Okay.
You were saying?
When I was at Stance, I worked with Panini, had a lot of good friends there, and we did a bunch of stuff when we had the NBA on court. They'll embed a piece of the ball, or they'll cut out and embed a piece of the jersey. And so I have a bunch of cards where, I have them kept at different locations, and I've given some to different people just off the strength of love, because it's not about that for me, but a bunch of cards. I have like a Montrezl Harrell rookie card with like a piece of his sock, a piece of his jersey, a piece of the game ball. And in baseball, this is only going to speak to baseball fans, but we were outfitting, and we do outfit. Stance does outfit for like the home run derby and all-star. Aaron Judge won the home run derby. I don't even remember what city it was. I think it was Miami, maybe. But I think maybe they made 10 cards or maybe 50 cards. I don't know, but they cut up the sock and they put it into his home run derby winning card. And this was Topps. And I gave 2 of those away to founders at Stance, and the third one someone else has. And I was even recently looking, it's so niche, you can't really find a rating for that card. You can't even really find what it's worth, but I'm sure it's worth something. But to get back to storytelling, and we can end with this, it's worth even more to me because I know what went into that moment. I know what went into the creation of that sock, and you see the sock on a card and you see it's worth 10K or whatever. For me, it's like, man, I know exactly what it took to get to that moment. I know what it took to work with Topps to create that moment. And, that is of greater value to me in present, than the money.
That's a fact. The last couple I'll show you here. Derek Jeter signed rookie auto, and then you'll get a kick out of this just from the apparel side. Can you tell whose business card this is?
That's Mr. Phil Knight, huh?
Mr. Phil Knight. And then
So,
here, I know you probably love Melo as much as I do, coming from the New York, his '03 rookie. Love Will Chamberlain too.
that's amazing. Yeah.
I have a couple of these ungraded and then graded. And then this last one that I'll show you, sort of a story to these. You'll never have heard of the guy. His name's Ernie Cavalry. He played in the 1940s, but in 1948, Bowman, they still do baseball products, but they haven't done basketball in 50 years. They put out a basketball product. This is the first ever basketball product ever made. They put out one set. It's famous because it has the George McConn rookie and a bunch of really, really high ticket items. But I was like, if that was the first set, what's the number one card in the set? Therefore, the first basketball card ever made. There are only about 50 of them graded. And here are
Got
three
like five.
of them. Yeah. So card number one in the 1948 Bowman set. So I like, buying things just out of like pure interest and curiosity in that, but also legends. And occasionally I'll gamble on the younger guys, but it's all
So
just
here's my question for you, and we'll leave it with this. When I was big into sneakers, and I was for a long time, a little bit less so now that I have kids and many, many other interests and issues and good things, but still love them, not as into them. But I always needed to know where they all were at all times. You know what I'm saying? I had so many, and some were at my apartment, some were at my parents, somewhere here, somewhere there. And like, I always needed to know, like, if I needed to get that sneaker right now, do I know where it is? So are you that way with cards, especially knowing that you're traveling right now? How do you keep track of your collection, let's say?
right. So I'll preface it with three things. One, the beautiful thing about cards is that like this is a card, they stack very well in boxes. You could have 100 high-end cards that take up the same real estate as one pair of sneakers, right? Like especially like a Fear of God type case. It's like ginormous, right? So that's one benefit of it. So you could carry 100, 200 cards with you in a suitcase very easily if you wanted to. There are also companies that hold them for you, like vaults in certain states that have tax benefits and lots of different things, to where holding them in that facility make a lot of sense for you and for your peace of mind as well. But then for me, one of the things that I'll do is I do like four different things. One, I buy a lot of fractional shares of items. So my buddies, I'll just give a quick shout out to them. Rob, he co-founded a company called Rally, where they buy high ticket items and fractionally sell them. So Friday, I'm probably going to be, I don't think by the time this releases, but it will have already happened by the time this comes out. They're dropping a Wayne Gretzky PSA 10 1978 O-Pee-Chee rookie. It's one of two. It's 830 grand. I'll put in some money, and then it just lives within the account. So that's another play on the investing in afar. I'll also go 50-50 with certain friends, and then they'll hold it so that it's at like tons of different locations with people I trust. And then some it's in safes and like in people I know in like in their houses. Some are on hand so I can trade and sell. But yeah, it's a combination of all the above.
But if I asked you where a random was, right?
I know where everything is. I also have spreadsheets for it all.
That's it. Yeah, you keep track of it like finances. I love that, man. Yeah, and honestly, again, I love it for the players, man. That people now see you as a piece of art. People see you now as something greater, and I hope they're getting paid by, and I know they were getting paid by the Paninis and Upper Decks and Tops of the world. And, a piece of whatever anyone else is making should always be theirs as the athletes were driving it.
Those deals are going to go up, though.
Yeah, I love that as of, 50 years after a guy plays, he's being commemorated. Someone like you who's 20 has a card of a guy who, played, 40 years before you were born. That's dope. That's legacy,
100%. Last thing, where can people find you best if you want them to follow you on social? If you don't, that's totally okay too.
I appreciate that. I always appreciate when people follow me, but I don't push for it. But it's at Tzvi Twersky. That's on IG. That's on Twitter. And all the other good social medias, TikTok, etc. Twersky. And yeah, appreciate the follows. I try keeping it interesting, a little behind the scenes storytelling. I'm not one for the cute quick caption. I like to tell that 3 paragraph, like max out your characters, but here's the story behind the picture. And
Very rare in today's age.
I don't try playing the algorithm, man. I know at the end of the day, the algorithm is going to play me. So at least I try keeping my followers entertained.
I love that. Well, my man, I appreciate you coming on and appreciate you always.
Appreciate you too, brother. Hopefully, post COVID and after everyone is vaccinated and the world's in a good spot, we get to link up at some point.
100%. All right, everybody. We'll see you on the next one.